Welcome to the Developers Who Test podcast, a podcast for developers who embrace test automation so they can ship better quality software and have more fun doing it. I'm your host, Chris Harbert, and I'm here today with Anton Angelov, founder and CTO of Automate the Planet, best-selling author and international conference speaker on test automation. Welcome to Developers Who Test, Anton.
Hey, Chris. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really glad to be here with you.
Today's episode of the Developers Who Test podcast is brought to you by Testery.com. Whether you're a developer who has just a handful of tests or even thousands, then your tests deserve to be running on the fastest and most reliable platform for open source testing. With AI-driven insights and analytics, unparalleled parallelism, and awesome integrations, Testery enables you to get more from your tests. Check us out today at Testery.com. Just looking at your stats, it's pretty impressive. You've spoken at over 50 conferences. You've literally written hundreds of articles, and your articles have received millions of views. And you've authored 8 books. I guess the place I would love to get started is, at what point did you realize this is where QA and test automation was going to take you in your career?
It was interesting because in the university, I was wondering what I want to do. Of course, I wanted to be a programmer, right? So I was looking back then for different positions for internship, right? Even when I haven't finished yet the university, and then I started this, so to say, software academy and they had 3 tracks, like at some point, and one of them was QA. But however, at the beginning, like for half a year, you were just participating. All of the people were a single track where you're literally learning how to code well, right? And then you're splitting up by interests. And at some point, there was this lecture by famous professionals from the different spheres, for example, support engineers, programmers, QAs. And when the QA part came, it was really interesting for me. So I was thinking, okay, maybe I can combine both, because I figured out that I was doing even before um, some stuff from the QA, even when I haven't realized that I was doing so. For example, I was playing video games in high school, and I was exploring and finding bugs there and exploiting them for the benefit of the game. So I was thinking, okay, I was already doing it. Then maybe this is really interesting because I like to optimize my work. So automation sounds awesome. And this is how it started. Then I switched the track, and then I saw that this is actually what I'm passionate about. And
Yeah, so I love that you're passionate about the testing side of things. A lot of people that I've talked to here, we've been on the development side, we've been on the testing side, and we actually choose to be on the testing side because that's more interesting for us. Do you feel like that's the case with you? And why would you say that the testing side is a little more interesting to you?
it depends what you understand by testing side. I mean, for me, initially, I believe that every great test automation engineer at some point, he or she needs to do a little bit of functional testing and walk the bugs and do the manual testing, exploratory testing, be part of the process, etc. Otherwise, if you're just software developer writing tests, um, you won't be never great, right? Because you lack this type of experience. But if I have to do only this, it's kind of boring for me. I mean, for me, the interesting part is this amalgamation between different spheres like really understanding how the software works when you try to break it or hack it or whatever, and then when you try to automate everything and but in a smart way. I'm not just speaking about dummy web automation tests that click somewhere, but the more advanced stuff. That basically you need to understand mm, the overall architecture where you use all of the web APIs to create the test data, for example, to simulate some queue messages to trigger something, then to, I don't know, verify it in some cloud part, etc. You understand what I mean? And
Mhm.
this is the interesting part for me because many people, even software developers, they're really focused just on really small part piece of the software that they don't understand the whole picture. But for me, the most interesting part is actually to understand the whole thing and trying to break it and try to improve it, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think a common theme that we see here on this podcast is that the skills required to be a good developer and the skills required to be a good tester are more and more overlapping every day. You have to be able to write code, you have to be able to test software. But at the same time, there's a uniqueness in the personalities of testers versus developers. So you're still writing code, but you might be of the mindset where you like solving problems and amazing customers, or you might be of the mindset where you like pulling things apart and seeing how they work and uh, finding whether or not they work properly. So I think it's really interesting hearing the mindset that you bring to software testing.
Yeah, but this is like individual thing, and even when in order to be a great manager, besides this automation, because I'm leading a lot of people in my company and I need to figure out the different type of talents, even when they're software developer and test. But you know that people they have different interests and skills, and you need to figure out. I mean, not all of the people are interested in understanding the whole architecture or do what I explained. Some people
Mhm.
are more into the communication. This means that they prefer, for example, to teach others, to support them. To For me, this is kind of annoying a little bit if I need to do just that. I mean, I'm a teacher, so part of my job is to do that, but I cannot do it all the time. It can be just like 20% of my time, but I will shoot myself if I need to do it 100% of the time. But there are some people that are completely fine to do it all the time. And from the other side, there are other people that are not so good at that and into the communication and with the empathy thing to uh, inspire others, but they're really good in troubleshooting and figure out really tough problems with the test data, for example. Or these are the people that if you have a really hardcore technical problem and they need to do a proof of concept in the research, they're super at that and they're really keen on doing it. So
Mhm.
we need to accept that we don't need to oversimplify, when we speak about a single role, because basically there are a couple of types of subcategories in the current position, and that's completely fine. I mean,
Mhm.
the good team is a team where you have all of these individuals that basically work together to accomplish that.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring up the individual aspect of it. I do a lot of change management projects where you're leading change within an organization, and it's way too easy from the management side of things to just say, okay, this is the way the team should look in theory, and this is the way that it currently is in theory, and so we just want everything to go from point A to point B, as if it's some simple path for everyone. But the reality is, you can't do a project like that without taking into account the actual individuals on the team and what their personalities are, what their goals are, what their skills are. Uh, so the, if the idea is, okay, now we want developers to own testing, for example, in theory, that might look good saying developers own testing now. But in practice, you've got to consider who are the actual developers on the team. What are their personalities? What do they know? What do they not know?
Hmm.
Before you just go make some blanket statement about what the team should be doing, right?
And this is sometimes hard to understand. Even if you hire new people, it takes some time to understand their character and where is their place, I guess. So
Mhm. Yeah, so let's say we've got someone who's been on the manual testing side of things, and they're interested in learning the skills of software development and becoming a better developer. Uh, where would you recommend that they get started, or what would you recommend they get started with?
I was questioning this myself for a long time. This is how I came up with these five new books, actually, because nowadays it's completely different thing from what was expected like 5 or 6 years ago. Now we need to understand much more things.
Hmm.
Before it was fine just, for example, to be able to write Selenium tests and be able to code in one language. But nowadays it's more challenging. You need to understand multiple languages. You need to understand how websites works. You need to know how to handle web APIs, databases, reporting tools, continuous integration, source control systems. There
Hmm.
are just too many things that, for example, 10 years ago, they weren't on the table. However, if we need to focus first and emphasize on it, the first thing will be just to learn one programming language pretty well, just to be able to code and solve these basic fundamental tasks about programming, right? And I always recommend first, and I really love Pluralsight. They have these paths for the languages, for example, for C Sharp or for Java, uh, that are really excellent resources where you have 40, 50 hours of video for a particular programming language. This is not enough. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you don't have an experience in programming, this probably just watching it won't make you a programmer. You need to probably have a live course with a mentor that gives you like all the lectures, or at least be able to help you and give you tasks, coding challenges to solve, because you can become a great programmer only by coding. Only by watching videos nothing will happen. um, so this is usually my suggestion when people ask me. They first need to watch videos or buy a book about it, solve coding challenges. Nowadays it's a little bit easier with ChatGPT and everything, because if you are stuck you can just ask, and this is almost one to one to what the mentor will explain. But again, I noticed that beginners are usually, they have this problem where they don't know what to ask or
Hmm.
where is exactly the problem. So I'm not sure that AI will be so smart to answer, correctly.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I think I've been doing software development for a really long time. I think I started coding in fifth grade, and I don't feel like I really became a good developer until I had the fortune of working in a company that was doing pair programming. And because we were doing pair programming, it was typically a more junior developer paired up with a more senior developer all day long. And what's amazing about being in an environment like that is there are a lot of little things that can make you so much more productive that you don't realize. Like, oh, there's a keyboard shortcut to automatically do a particular refactoring. And so if you see someone else use that keyboard shortcut, now all of a sudden, every time you need to, you're that much faster. And it's really hard to uh, get that level of experience, I think, from watching videos or, like you say, Chat GPT. I'm sure you could ask ChatGPT what are the shortcuts, but it's not going to sit there watching you code. At least today, it's not going to sit there watching you code and say, "Oh, hey, what about this shortcut? What about that shortcut?" So this idea of mentorship is huge. Let's say I'd like to get a mentor in software development, and I don't have one yet. How would you recommend asking someone if they're willing to mentor you?
Again, I think it's not about, for example, going to LinkedIn and asking someone. It should be more of a, again, signing. At least here in Bulgaria, it's we have a lot of academies, and outside of universities, we have these unofficial paid courses for example, 6 months mentorship program for learning Java or QA or test automation. And this is actually even now like a prerequisite for before applying to a job for test automation. Only with university, it's not enough. You need to go to these paid courses. Um, Again, this might be a virtual thing. That's completely fine. But again, one because these really skillful people, they like me. I'm from time to time I'm doing these big business trainings. I go to companies and I give this lecture for 3 days or whatever, and then of course I'm not teaching just a single person, right? But they're like a group of 10, and it's easy because people, they don't require always constantly, they don't have constantly questions, but you can split your time across them. And when this is focused, I think this is the best way. Otherwise, it's if the person is not directly in your company, and if you're not the mentor, probably not so many people will uh, agree to do this type of mentorship. Of course, many people reach me over LinkedIn and asking, "Can you give me guidance?" Like we are speaking now, and of course, I'm going to write a short, like, advice or something, but I'm not going to do that every day because I have 5 interns in my own company that I need to give my time to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the best advice here is just to find at some point, if you can, a real internship where you know that you have that you're not alone, and that you have this mentorship from someone.
Mm-hmm.
And I always advise people here that they need to find this is more important than money first. I'm not saying that you need to, at least here by law, the company always should pay for the internship. I'm not speaking about that, but you not need to compare the companies just about the initial salary for the first 2 3 months. And I'm explaining to people, when you're intern, you're doing nothing for the company. The company is just investing in you and spending time of the seniors, so they're heavily investing in you. So you cannot expect like a super higher salary as a junior or regular, because this
Mm-hmm.
is totally different. I mean, the junior, even if it's doing less job than the regular engineer, he's still doing job. I mean, he's still doing something. While the intern, its only job is just to, study, and someone from the company is investing time in them. So, but again, when you compare them, it shouldn't be by the money that you get from the internship, but whether you have this opportunity to learn from somebody like pair programming, or to have a more detailed program, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really, really good career advice for junior folks. The idea of focusing on maximizing learning more so than which job pays more. Especially coming out of school, I think this idea of just picking the job that pays the most at the biggest company you can find seems very appealing. But what a lot of us don't realize, excuse me, what a lot of us don't realize until later in our careers is that in bigger companies, you're more likely to be very siloed and have a very specific role. Like maybe you're only an API developer. And as an API developer, you're not allowed to access the database. You're not allowed to do website coding. You're not allowed to go into the AWS infrastructure because there are big teams in place for each one of those areas. And so it's really hard to get that cross-cutting experience. But if you go to a startup with, say, 50 to 300 employees, uh, you're probably going to be doing all of that. And so in a very short amount of time, you might walk away as a tester knowing how to test websites, knowing how to test APIs, uh, messaging queues, databases, because you were actually given the opportunity to learn that because of where you chose. So I think that would be really good advice for younger generations who are trying to learn how to become good developers who test, is to seek out those opportunities where you can maximize learning, especially early in your career.
It really depends whether you're switching jobs just because of the money that you hear that many IT are better paid than other professions, or you really want to be great engineer, because there are these two types of people, right? At least here, someone here that at least here there is this big difference between other professions and IT, and they want to switch from example from accountant or from, I'm not saying nothing bad about accountants or other folks, because we actually have people that switch and they're pretty good at what they're doing. But I'm saying that, for example, there are certain professions that you need to be really passionate in order to succeed or to switch, especially when it's more related to not so engineering studies before in the university. And what I'm saying is that um, at the beginning, there are a couple of types of companies. There's some companies that are really big corporations, and sometimes if you get a job there, it will be like super chill for you. It won't be really, as you said, there will be just one thing. The time will pass by. It will be just one thing to learn. However, there are other companies, like my company, where we're consulting many different clients. They already have test automation. We need to be much better than the rest of the QAs in order to solve the other company's issues, right? And all of the people here, they have this environment where we try to hire all of the best people here, and they compete with each other. They learn from each other, and there is this community here that it's everybody is driving all of them to learn more and more. I'm completely against overtime. I'm not speaking about that, but it's about this culture of learning much more than what is needed for even your current position right now. For example, even if you are right now in the place where you write only web automation, this doesn't mean that we're sharing how the mobile automation is done or how the other infrastructure in other language is done, etc., etc. And you're seeing this competitive environment where nobody is hiding what they know, but they share it. But again, this is not easy, and it's not for everybody. Again, if you're just switching and you want, for example, you have a huge family, you don't have the time, you don't want to all of this stress or whatever, they're just different type of companies that you need to look for.
Yeah, there's some really interesting parts of what you just said there, like the idea of learning more than what you need for the current role. I think that can be so rewarding for folks. Uh, Sometimes what people get out of the job isn't just the salary. Um, like some people are more motivated by learning, some people are more motivated by solving problems. And so, giving folks the opportunity to learn more than what they need in the present role is important for a lot of people. I also like that you brought up there that when you're doing consulting, you get to see what the problems look like in different companies, and you get to solve similar problems in very different domains. At Testery, we do that as well, where we're coming in and helping folks set up test automation. And uh, if you're at a single company, sometimes you can start to feel a little stuck, or you can get bored because I've already set up all of the testing frameworks. Everything's running nicely, and now I'm just going from one form to the next as new things are changing. But the domain is staying the same all the time. The problem you're solving is staying the same all the time. One of the nice things about doing what we do is we get to see companies at different parts of the journey, trying to solve different problems in different frameworks in different domains. So it's like I might still be doing web automation, uh, and I might even still be doing it in the same language, but now the company I'm doing it for is a B2C company versus a B2B company. And so there's a lot about that that's really interesting and maybe even warrants different approaches, I think.
Yeah, as you said, our both companies, Automate the Planet and Testery, we're doing the same thing. We're more of a like consultancies agencies where you just switch projects, and which is interesting. I mean, this is completely different than outsourcing or whatever because you're in charge of everything. You're teaching other people. You're telling what needs to be done in order to solve the problem. You're the one that it's the driving force of the quality, which is
Mm.
something that I'm really passionate about, and I really like this type of job, and it's really rewarding.
Yes. So when you go into a company that's looking to get started with test automation, what does that look like for you?
It depends what you understand by getting started. Usually, we work for more mature clients that they already have some kind of a QA process, test automation. We also worked in the past for smaller businesses and startups, but this is more rarely compared to our normal clients. Usually, they are more of bigger companies, etc. And as I said, they already have automation, and they have these problems where they have too many flaky tests. They, for example, spend much more time maintaining the old automation rather than uh, writing new tests. And usually, the thing that I do is that I want to understand the whole process, not just what they do in the automation, but what is the product, what is the process, how they plan, how much time they spend, for example, for support, where they write their test cases, whether they do manual testing, etc. Probably you're aware and you know this popular um, process framework called TMMI, Test Maturity Model Integration. I use a simplified version of it to measure the maturity of the current QA organization to decide whether the automation is their actual problem or first they need to solve many other problems before taking care of the automation. And usually, when we do this type of research, of course, we can do a proof of concept with, for example, our framework or something else. And we give some kind of a presentation about our findings and our plan and suggestions. Sometimes it's just that, then many times they just need outside help for 1 year, 2 years to get started, and we work together with the other test automation engineers or QAs. We try to educate them on the best practices in programming. This is how we work.
What's an example of something that would need to change other than the test automation? You said you go in and you do this evaluation, and sometimes it's not really the reason they have flaky tests and they're spending too much time maintaining the tests isn't really because of the tests themselves. It's because of some other problem. What are a couple examples of what those other problems might be?
There are many examples in all of the organizations is something different. I can give you an example for 5, 6 years ago with a smaller client. Um, they wanted automated tests because they were thinking that this will solve all of their quality problems. Instead of they didn't back then they even didn't had actual QA.
Mm.
They didn't even had a proper source control. They didn't do code reviews. They didn't had unit tests. And I explained to them, okay, we need first to have a source control, then to have unit tests, or but before you have unit tests, because everything was static and no inversion of control and anything, this means that everything was like this, and you cannot really write proper unit tests. I mean, you can write hacky tests with some paid tools, as you know, but it's not the same thing. In order to write it the right way, you need to establish a testable code infrastructure to do that.
Mhm.
So this influenced the project to be rewritten, and actually, right now they have a like completely rewritten version of the software following all of the best practices for unit testing. This is how we get started, and just after 2 years after that, we started working on automation. But before that, little by little, we were working on the TMMI suggestions to have, for example, we bought a test case management system. Then we integrated Jira because they weren't using Jira, but I don't know, something Trello or something like that. So little by little, we integrated all of those systems, and they really improved the process. Um, Another typical problem is where the QAs involved, they were in many organizations the previous manual QAs that there were almost no time or focused effort to, how to say, learn them to be a good test automation engineers, because these are two totally different professions. They have similarities, but they are different professions. In one of them, you are a software developer. In other, you're just a tester. That maybe you understand the process. It depends. But when your manager or your boss comes to you and say, "Okay, we want test automation. Do you want to do that?" Do you think that people will say, "No, I don't want that," because they're going to be fired, right? So in many organizations, they said yes because they don't have the choice, even if they prefer to do their own job. And then again, this is, in order to become a good programmer, this requires time. This is why we go to universities. You spend 3 4 years there to learn many different engineering subjects. It's not just 10 hours of programming. This is completely not enough, right? It's not
Don't,
just a single book.
yeah, don't you think it's weird that we feel like it's okay to do this with manual testing and test automation engineers and development, but that we would probably never do that with different roles? Like, you don't normally see you wouldn't see someone coming up to someone in accounting and saying, okay, we need more people in marketing now, so we don't want you to be an accountant anymore, now we want you to be a marketer and learn how to do that. Like, it feels strange to me that we do that with software testing more so than we would be willing to do that with other roles.
For me, this force switch, as you said, probably is not right. Not all testers can become test automation engineers, and this is not right at all. We already, I always say that probably this never will be gone to be the need for testers, right? We always need this type of functional testing because this is the thing that it's logging the actual bugs. It's like
Mm.
many developers don't understand that automation is not about finding the new bugs. This is just um, this is just about mitigating the risks of appearing of regression bugs, which is something different. Actually, 2 days ago, we had a similar conversation, and I was explaining no, automation tests are not about that. Automated tests are just to verify that the existing functionality continues to work. But in order to find the new bugs that you're complaining that appeared on production, they were never meant to be covered with automated tests in the first place. And you're the ones that you needed to, communicate with the QAs that probably we need to focus their effort there in order to find those bugs. And I'm more about having these hybrid roles. By hybrid, I mean 50% of the time doing this type of functional exploratory testing and be more creative how to break the stuff, and then the other 50% to write automated tests. This is much better than um, you know having no manual testing at all. Even this split is not correct. I mean, I don't like the split between test automation and manual, etc.
Yeah, I have found that when you're doing the automation, uh, like when you're creating the automation for new functionality, you're exercising the functionality of the new feature so much that in a way you're doing manual testing and you do tend to find a lot of issues. But that said, I think what you're saying is a good reminder that uh, the effort that you're putting into the automation can be a bit of a distraction from being able to get in the right mindset of, am I really thinking about how this thing might break? uh like if you're looking at the new functionality and the problem you're trying to solve is uh how do I get Selenium to close the pop-up, you're
Mm,
thinking about the pop-up. You're not thinking about, should the pop-up even be there, should it
mm.
not be there, is there a different way to create the pop-up? And so I do think that's a really good point, that it's uh we need to focus more on what's the difference between new functionality testing versus regression testing, and where does automation have a more important role in those two things.
There are two things that I can add here. The first one is actually a couple of days ago, we were creating a new process for a client of ours. And we were defining this process where we established just this particular role where this engineer, software developer in test, he or she needs to first do this type of functional testing focusedly, not from the perspective of automation, but you know, to check the functionality that this engineer will automate. But first walk all of the these functional bugs, focusedly just on that, doing it. And this is just 20% of his time for the sprint, and then focus just on the automation. And let's be realistic, the time where we had only 100 testers to cover something, it's over. This is just too slow. Many businesses see it. This is why companies like ours exist, because we need to integrate and be better at checking the existing functionality that doesn't break, because you always always to execute the same thing over and over again, it's like even not possible. With you cannot just increase the number of manual testers, right? However, this will, at least for now, not disappear, and it's really vital. Just without it, it's again not good for the product.
Yeah, so last thing I want to chat about here, you mentioned that you're located in Bulgaria. What's the testing community like there, and what do you like about it?
What I like about the community itself,
Yeah,
it's
just like what languages do people tend to use? Like what programming languages for coding? Are there good conferences to go to? A good community? It sounds like you all have uh, some nice opportunities in between university and actually getting into the workforce for training.
yeah,
And,
there are
and I
many.
find that those things fluctuate depending on where you're located. So just kind of curious what your
Actually,
community is like.
there was this type of numbers recently published on LinkedIn. I don't remember the website, like statistics, like how many testers are there for 100,000 people. Bulgaria wasn't included, but if it was included, actually probably we were going to be in top five,
Hmm.
because there are many engineers. Actually, in Sofia, I think we live 2 million people, and we have 10,000 QAs, which is a really big
Wow.
number. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a huge number, and we have um, 3 or 4 really good testing conferences per year, and regularly there are like 2 to 3 events each month regarding QA and test automation. Primarily, maybe I don't know, 30 to 40% out of these people are test automation engineers, and like in other Eastern Europe countries, we're I think a little bit better than some other parts of the world in what we do. I don't know, maybe this is because of the educational system, I don't know, but it's more focused on the engineering side. Again, from time to time, with these paid courses, sometimes we need to re-educate people in the internships how to do this type of engineering besides just getting the theory. And we use
Mhm.
mainly, I don't know, maybe Java, C Sharp, JavaScript, Python. These are, I think, the top four languages
Mhm.
mainly.
Cool. Cool. Yeah. And last question, what's next for you? Do you have any conferences coming up, books to be written? Uh,
Actually, yesterday I spoke at QA Global Summit. Um, I think I will take a little bit a short break out of conferences because
mhm.
2 months ago my daughter was born and it's a little bit crazy at home.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, but probably next year I will start writing my new books. These 5 books they were primarily focused on C sharp, and maybe I have the goal at some point to have them for Java as well.
Mm.
Um, but we'll see how it goes. I mean, I continue writing and creating. Right now, I'm creating videos for the Lambda Test YouTube channel, and we
Mhm.
have a new series coming up maybe in the next few months about design patterns. So probably I will
Mhm.
work on that. I'm working in parallel about the Java test automation training on our website. So
Mhm.
a lot of content to
Cool.
be recorded and written.
Cool. Yeah. So, thank you for coming on the podcast. We've been speaking with Anton Angelov, who is a prolific content creator in our space, international conference speaker, and founder and CTO of Automate the Planet. If you do get a chance, highly recommend checking out his 5 book series on Amazon. It's called Automated Testing Unleashed. So do please check that out. And thank you for being on the program, Anton.
Thank you.